don't code quietly, think out loud. And also, because correlation always equals causation, as we know, if you do Zumba, you will not get an offer. So don't do Zumba under any circumstances.
Hey everyone, Future Sam here again. You're about to watch part 2 of our 2-part series on interviewing. First part was mentorship from ghosting to guidance, and the second part is interview stories, the good, the bad, and the funny. I think we all have at least one interview story we can look back and share pretty quickly. So Shiv and I decided to share ours. Anything from being asked to dance on the spot to writing sequel on a giant sticky note. Get ready for our most memorable, cringeworthy, and just generally hilarious tales from interviews that we've had over the years. This one made us laugh a lot, so we do hope you enjoy it.
And now the focus of this episode was supposed to be interviews. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that.
So
I think people find it really hard to talk about their experience in interviews sometimes, and sometimes it's even difficult to prepare for because you remember all the details of like, oh, I had to spend 10 days writing this regex that like I really needed it to clean my data, but it took forever and I could barely read it by the end. And that's not really what the interviewer wants to hear. So like, what do you think is a good way to talk about your experiences in an interview?
So like my previous projects or previous work experience?
Yeah, or just like structuring your interview responses in these like behavioral interviews of tell me about a time that you had this situation.
Oh, you're talking about STAR.
I might be getting at that, yes.
Yeah, no, okay. So how to answer questions in general, right? We should always be approaching interview questions, behavioral and even technical, maybe different structure, but behavioral questions, right? We should have, I'll call it STAR. Other people might call it other things, but just a framework or a standardized approach to how to answer these questions. So what does STAR mean, right? It means situation, task, action, and result. So I give you the situation, I give you what I had to do, I give you what I did, and then I give you what happened because of the action that I took, right? So essentially, how can I constantly, and you have to practice this too. It's not something that when I get asked a question, tell me about yourself, maybe is not so much a STAR question, but tell me about a time when is very much a STAR question. And okay, so how can you train yourself? Okay, tell me about a time when triggers this. Okay, STAR in here, and then how can I talk about STAR in a way that is easy to understand for the interviewer and is a way that I can adapt to the different kind of tell me about a time when questions, right? Because there will be many type of tell me about a time when questions, and that's when you have to give a quick response to a quick. I'm not giving a quick response right now, but quick and to the point usually, so that way the interviewer understands what you're trying to say.
Yeah, it was also just funny the way you framed it, where like you're basically saying when you hear tell me about a time, that should like call your STAR function in
Yeah,
your programmer
exactly.
brain or whatever. Um, and STAR is fine. I think a lot of people talk about it online. And I think taking it a step further, I actually do prefer the SAIL framework. And this is just a better framing device for me. At the end of the day, it's about your communication style and just communicating well overall. But I think SAIL can guide you better. And the SAIL framework is a little bit different. So where STAR is situation, task, action, result, SAIL is actually situation, action, impact, and learnings. So this just keeps top of mind the fact that you want to talk about the actual impact that you made. It's not like how the team approached the problem. It's what is the impact that you actually made and what did you learn from that? And this is also really powerful because there are some questions in behavioral interviews that are designed to trip you up, like, oh, what is your worst quality? And like, tell me about a time you really screwed up. So you definitely want to make sure you get that learning in there because you don't just want to say, oh, well, I broke prod and that's the end of the story. You need to talk about what you learned from that and maybe the guardrails that you put up to avoid those kinds of issues in the future, because that's what makes you a good engineer, a good data scientist, a good employee, a good whatever.
It's a really good point, because in the STAR framework, the answer to that question would be, I was working for X company, I had to do Y task. I did Y task, but I did Y task like a little derivative of the Y task, and then I broke prod, and that was the
Yep.
result. And
And
so
that's the end.
that's the whole STAR framework.
Yeah, so again, you just want to take it a step further, give yourself your best shot. And when you're scrambling to like tell the story and also remember, did I hit the points? Did I hit the STAR? then you don't want to have to remember another thing. So if you just
Right.
use sail instead, then you're not going to have to like hold all that stuff in your brain RAM or whatever all the computer science analogies we'll use. Yeah.
Brain RAM is gonna be my hashtag for this episode.
Yeah. Somebody put it on a t-shirt.
And I also think now that we talk about this, I also think in Star the T and the A are kind of redundant. It's
Mhm.
like I can cover T and A. I can cover T in like half a sentence mostly, or like maybe a sentence, right? So it's like why even give that a letter in the acronym? That the sale is better because A, the action, I can tell you like what I started off doing and then what I finished with, and that can kind of all get wrapped up into the A.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, and the task was to build a GitHub action that creates release notes automatically. And what did I do? I built the GitHub action. Like yeah. Did I do something different than what I should do? Hopefully not, right? So that's another good point.
I like.
I think there are, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna talk about other questions. We have some other. We have these two that I did want to hit on because we talked about this earlier, right? One is tell me about yourself, and just how to even handle getting asked that because that's usually the first question, and then what the interviewer will do is we'll say tell me about yourself, and then we'll just stop talking, and we'll see
Yep.
how you handle the like really uncomfortable sudden stop, and then there's just gap of silence that you now have to deal with and you have to formulate a coherent answer to tell me about your like these are is very intentional why this question is asked like this.
Totally. And I think a lot of people don't even realize it's an interview question sometimes. Like they think it's just a conversation starter, but no, they are grading you. They're watching for how you respond and what you say. So the way I think about this, and please feel free to add on. The way I think about this is an elevator pitch where it has to be inevitable that you would be in this job. Like this person's life story paints them so perfectly for this job that I can't imagine anybody else doing it. So what you're doing is you're just piecing together the parts of your life and your work experience that make you perfect for the role. That is the only content that you include. You don't include like, oh, I was born here, like not relevant. You're usually typically starting with your education, I would say for people in this audience. So you're starting with, hey, my background is in this. I have this work experience. I'm really excited about this industry, this domain, or this cutting edge technology. And that's why I'm so excited to be here today. And that's the whole thing. It's literally just what are the bits of my story that paint me as the perfect candidate for this exact role and make it inevitable. Make it like, oh, it would be stupid to not hire them.
And even in that case too it's I don't even have any real experience, right? I'm just excited about this thing. Maybe I took a class on it, maybe I did a pet project on it, right? I have some exposure to this thing,
Hmm.
and that's why I want to be here. Yeah, please do not go back and tell me that you grew up here and you were born here. I had that happen before, and I made up an excuse to end the interview like really early. It was just like, hey, thanks for your time. We'll get back to you. I was like, I can't deal with this.
Yeah, and it's on some level, it is a bit unfair where like I do think that the question, especially for neurodivergent people, I think the question should be like, hey, tell us why you're a great fit for this role. Like that would be a way better question. And I think that is really what they're asking. Um, but
Absolutely, that is
yeah,
absolutely the question.
that's absolutely the question, but they won't tell you that. And I think that's the annoying part to me. But you have to just, again, with your big brain program, you have to know that when they say tell me about yourself, they're really asking, tell me why you're a good fit for this role and don't tell me any other extraneous details. And on some level, if you're 5 years into your career and you don't know that, then like interview over, unfortunately. And it's sad, but that's the truth.
You can give me a fun fact, right? Like I do Zumba on the side, right? That could just be like a if you want to end it with that, or like be either you probably end it with that. That way, like because if you tell me that as your first sentence, I'm probably gonna fight you. But if you like end it with that, then I've like understood where like you're coming from and that you are a good fit for this role, and then you just go, oh, and by the way, like I am a fun person on the side. That's a cool little Easter egg.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll come back to Zumba later. So let's put a pin in that. We'll come back to that later. But I also wanted to ask Sam, how do you handle the questions when they say, why do you want to work here? And the obvious answer is just like, you need money to live in
Right.
society.
Why are you excited about our company? Why
Hmm.
us as compared to
Why us?
anyone else?
Yeah, because you emailed me back.
It's like Mr. Krabs, like I like money.
Yes.
Yeah, you emailed me back, and I like money. Yeah, I mean, it very much relates to the first question, right? Like, tell me about yourself. Like, tell me about yourself and why do you want to work here? They can have very similar stories. Usually, you're not going to get asked that second question if you paint the picture well enough in the first question, right? I think
Yeah.
if you get asked that second question, it's because you weren't clear. It's not clear enough to me, like yet, why you want to work here. If you were asked that first question, right? If you're asked why, like, tell me about yourself, then you answer, and then I say, okay, why do you want to work here? Like, you didn't paint the picture well enough to me in telling me about yourself. So I need to now ask you, why do you want to work here? Because whatever you said in the first question, sure, maybe I got a good feel for your technical experience or your capabilities, but I don't necessarily understand why those align with the role that I'm interviewing for. Just sitting in the spot of the interviewer, right?
Yeah, I really like that framing. And if you think about it, like these questions are really just there to get information that the interviewer needs. So if you give them everything that they need as fast as possible, as early as possible, you're saving yourself time and you're showing how good of a fit you are. And like when I think back now to the some of the best interview questions or the best interview rather that I've had, they'll say like, "Oh, I was going to ask this, but you answered that already." And it just kind of happens when the conversation flows naturally and you know how to lead that conversation.
It's happened a lot to me, both as an interviewer and as an interviewee, and that's
Flex.
usually
Yeah, that's a good sign. Very casual. I'm just really good at this. Casual.
humble brag. Uh, what a, what about questions? What about questions you don't know the answer to?
Yeah, so I think this can really trip people up. And I know that in less technical fields, it's super common to just try to rattle someone, just like say something to see if they get angry or they get nervous or whatever. So that's something to keep in mind too, is like you really want to control your response as much as you can. But when someone asks you something you don't know the answer to, and let's take this in the context of like maybe a data science question where it's like asking you about some obscure machine learning algorithm and you can't remember the exact details of like what's the use case for this, what's the output for this, how do I read that, how do I drive decision making with that. So what you might say is like, oh, I remember that this is really similar to XYZ other machine learning algorithm, and I've actually used that in a project before, and I'm thinking about it in that context. Can you give me a little bit more guidance as to what you're looking for here? So basically, what you want to do is you want to offer them everything in that ballpark that you know. You definitely don't want to make things up. You definitely don't want to like say something unrelated. But you want to say, hey, I'm remembering it in this context. I'm a little fuzzy on this detail. Can you remind me a little bit of guidance of what you're going for here? So I think that's the way I approach it.
Yeah, if you make things up, the interviewers are probably already they already know the answer, right? Because it would be kind of silly as an interviewer to ask a question that I don't know the answer to, because then I can't confirm whether your answer is right or not. So if you start
Yeah.
making stuff up, like I probably know that you have no idea what you're talking about. Actually, I've conducted a lot of interviews, and I'll just start writing down like they're making things up at this point. Like I will write that down in my notes. That way I remember later, like, oh, they gave this answer, but they definitely were guessing and they had no idea. Uh,
Disappointing. And it also it's good to keep in mind that like admitting you don't know or you haven't done something, it looks way better and way less shady than making stuff up and lying.
yeah,
It's a
because
much better option.
even if you make it up and get it right, I can usually tell by the tone in your voice that you're guessing. So,
Wow.
like, don't even try. Like, unless you're really, really good at lying and you're like a psychopath, and then maybe I won't pick it up. But most people, right, when they get that question and they don't know the answer, they get this deer in the headlights look, and then they start talking, and you really hope that the words that come out of their mouth are, "Hey, thanks for asking. Here's what I know about things close to this. But past that, right, I would need a little bit more guidance, right? If it's anything other than that, after the deer in the headlights look, uh, we're usually pretty on guard."
Yeah, totally. And guys, if you're on the other side of the interview table with Sam LaFell, don't mess around. Tell the truth.
Yeah,
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it's because at work you would get guidance, right? Like if you need a little bit of help on something or if you need to like get some context on the business value or the stakeholder objectives or whatever other thing, you'll be able to just talk to somebody about it. That's okay.
or if you are gonna guess, give me like a, hey, here's, if I can, like, I'm going to spend the next 30 seconds, like, kind of mini whiteboard, like, just kind of get my ideas out onto a sheet of paper and, like, try to see if I can get there by thinking through it a little bit. Sure, okay, like, give me a heads up and see if you can work through it, right? But if you just have no idea, like, please don't try.
Yeah, I like that approach. And I think my company now, they're allowing like Google and ChatGPT on programming interviews. As long as you understand things from like a systems design perspective, you can explain everything and you can like correct mistakes that AI will inevitably make and be good at your job because they want you to use those things in the job. They want you to work 3 times as fast. They just want you to also know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah, as opposed to like vibe coding and then just saying, cool, uh,
Yeah.
we're done.
Yes, there is a place for vibe coding. It's not in interviews. That's not where it's useful. So now that we've talked a lot about kind of behavioral interview questions, frameworks, how to deal with interview problems and struggles, I would like to hear some of your best and worst interview stories. And like, what are the things that stand out that you look back on and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that I did this.
What do you think we have? Wait, 10 minutes? I'll try to keep it short.
Yeah, 10, 15 minutes, I think is fine.
It'll be all right. Okay. So, I mean, my number one interview story is just, I can't make this up. Like, so I was in grad school, and we had recruiters coming to the grad school to do interviews and kind of see who they wanted to bring on as, entry level data scientists coming out of grad school. So they visited us, and I was interviewing with this, what can I say, financial institution in Fort Worth, Dallas in general, and they asked me. I forget how this came up, but I think the interviewer asked me what I did outside of like school and work, right, and just what made me kind of like an interesting person to be around, because I think they were looking for culture fit as well, which, we could get into that later. Like, why does it matter if I do things outside of work? But they were trying to get an idea of this. And so I said, oh, at the time I was doing a lot of Zumba. This was like right before COVID hit, and I think I had just gotten actually my Zumba license, like to teach Zumba classes as a certified instructor, or I was about
Wow.
to, like, in the next couple of weeks. And she said, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Show me." And I said, "I don't have any, like, I haven't recorded myself recently. I don't have any good video." And she was like, "No, no, like right here." And I was like, "What do you mean right here?" And she was like, "In the interview, put on a song and like show me some of your Zumba moves." And at this point, she's either like trying to see if I would just like make a fool of myself or if I'm just lying, right, about the Zumba thing. I don't know. I don't know what she's trying to say at this point. And I was like, okay. And so what did I put on at the time? This was March of 2020, or like right before COVID, and I think
Wow.
Justin Bieber had a song. It, I think it was called Peaches. I think it's called Peaches is the song. And I think there was like a Zumba thing that the Zin, this is like the Zumba Council, had released like that month or the month before.
Wait, pause for a second. The Zumba Council?
Yeah, so when you're in Zumba, like you pay a membership of $40 a month, and you get a bunch of choreography sent to you. A lot of Zumba instructors will also make up their own choreography because that's why you do Zumba. You like to dance and make and like have fun. But you also get sent moves from the Zumba Council. They're based in Miami. It's a whole thing.
Wow, there's a whole governing body. It's giving the Magicians Alliance for Arrested Development.
And they had sent that, so I had spent some time that month learning the choreo. So that was the choreo that was at the top of my head at the moment. So I was like, sure. So I threw on 30 seconds of the Peaches choreo, or whatever it was by Justin Bieber or something like this. Uh, and then they did fly me out to Dallas. At least I did at least get a next round interview. So they gave me, that might have been the only reason they did it. They might have just said, like, Sam embarrassed the hell out of himself in an interview. We should probably bring him to Texas and feed him once or twice to make it worth it. Because then there were 10 people that flew down to Texas, 8 of them got job offers, and I was one of the 2 that did not get a job offer. But they flew me down to Texas, and I got some food. I mean, it's fine now. I'm doing all right. But that was definitely my most wild interview experience. Other than right, we talk about take home tests and other things that have happened, but this topped all of them. And then just quickly too, in the same grad school interview with a different company, also with a financial institution, but different company, they had me do FizzBuzz, Python-based FizzBuzz, but they had me write it. Like I had to write it on like a napkin or something. Like I couldn't. I had no computer in front. Like they just wanted me to have it at the top of my head, which I did, and I wrote it out without but I didn't speak while I was, and I think that was probably the problem. Right, I didn't talk
Mm.
out loud while I was writing it. I was just like, "Oh, you want me to do FizzBuzz? Sure," and I just wrote it down. I didn't like ask any clarifying questions or speak out loud while I was doing it. I just wrote it and gave it to her. And then I did not get invited for another round with this company. So the
Tusk
show
tusk.
goes to show like you can know the thing almost perfectly, uh, but if you're not kind of showing some of these other traits that people are looking for, then you're probably not going to get that callback.
Yeah, especially with FizzBuzz, where like pretty much everyone who's opened a code editor knows FizzBuzz. So to stand out and succeed in the interview, you really have to talk through it and strategize through it and explain like what you're doing. Um, so the two main takeaways here are don't code quietly, think out loud, and also because correlation always equals causation, as we know, if you do Zumba, you will not get an offer. So don't do Zumba under any circumstances.
If you even do Zumba, make up a different like say you're like a power lifter or something. You don't have weights in the interview room, so they can't ask you to do some powerlifting right there.
Yeah, they'd be like, show me the lift, and you're like, oh, easy.
You're like you can become a rock climber. Like what are you gonna do, climb up the wall like Spider-Man? Like no.
Don't have any hobbies that they can ask you to like dance for them on the spot, basically. Think ahead.
Mine are a little ridiculous. Yours it seems like are a little more like these are some absurd interviews that I've had that are a lot more realistic than the 2 I've mentioned. So what have been some of your r- memorable interview experiences? But we can take memorable as either good or bad.
Totally. So these are definitely things I remember. They really stand out in my mind. I think sometimes you can go a little bit too hard when you get asked like, why would you pick us and why do you want to do this job? And you can lean into it a little bit too much, which is something I did when I was a student. So when a big company, a big bank asked me, hey, why do you want to work with us? Why do you want this data science job at this bank? And I said, data can really change the world. And like, I think it's so cool. And I think what you guys do is so awesome. And I leaned into it maybe a little bit hard, but the interviewer was not having it. He was like so done with me. And so he asked me, well, if you think data can change the world, why do you want to work at a bank? Shouldn't you be like fixing climate change or something? And I was like, wow.
You're like, wow, I just ate my own words.
Yeah, and he's expecting me to falter, right? He's expecting me to like
Right.
just start babbling or just be stunned into silence and not have a response. And so I actually, kudos to past Schiff, I responded to this very well. And I said to him, this was during like the PPP loans that were kind of saving small businesses and helping people get through the pandemic. That was like this era. And so I said, well, banks totally can change the world. Like, look at all the PPP loans helping businesses stay afloat and helping families get by in this difficult time. And I believe that like you can make a positive impact wherever you are. And I said something to that effect. And he looked at me and he was like, wow, that was a good response. Like, I really backed you into a corner there.
He was trying to back you into the corner, and you dodged that. You ducked
Yeah.
it
And
out of
I,
it.
I got out of the corner.
Did you end up getting an offer?
I did. I got an offer and I did that internship. Yeah, I did.
Was it in that was that interview the last interview, or was it one of the first interviews?
That was the super day. So I think it was like the second to last or last interview of like three interviews back to back. And then it was Chinese New Year, so one of my interviewers just didn't show up. And I think that was the last interview
So
because there was
what?
one more, but the guy didn't show up.
So it was your last interview, and they were like, "Wow, yep. If she's that good at playing politics, Definitely can work at a bank.
Yeah, get that offer out right now. Another one that stands out for me is another interview cycle around the same time with a different company where they asked me to like talk about all my experience, like walk me through your resume type of question, which is not all that different from tell me about yourself, by the way. It's a very similar question. And so I start telling them, I did this, I did that, I did this project. And I said, yeah, that pretty much covers it. Like that's why I'm a great fit, really excited to be here. And then they hit me with, okay, but what other experience do you have that's not on your resume? And when you're a college student and you're stretching your resume as far as it can go to like fill up the whole page, this is just honestly, this is like a mean-spirited question in my opinion. I think like you shouldn't ask students this. Um, but I started telling them, I do these types of extracurriculars and I love reading and writing and I'm very into like good communication skills and all these things. And uh, they start saying, well, we only asked you that because you present really well, so we thought you must have something else. And I'm like, you could have just given me a compliment. You could have
Yeah,
just said, you're doing great. Like, you didn't have to turn this into a taxing question that like nobody is prepared for.
right. Why would I ask that question?
Right? Why would you ask that question? And like, imagine if I had this perfect experience, but I just didn't put that on my resume. Like, I don't know. I think that would be silly. I think I can end with just a couple more quick ones that are pretty funny. So I've had two different interviews where I had to write SQL, but the place where I was writing SQL was in like the cell of an Excel sheet. And I know this is like programmers' bane of their existence, where they don't understand how Excel works. But basically, just having to write SQL with no like linters, not being able to run it or see the syntax highlighting, it's just very stressful. And I felt so prone to like syntax errors or spelling mistakes or something in a field because I just kept reading it over and over and over, trying to be like, did I get this right? And I got both of those jobs too. So maybe it's a good system for me. I don't know. There was one more where this was actually for Scholastic, where I had to write SQL on paper on like a giant post-it note. So like a really big sticky note that was like this big. And one of the questions was to like select all the columns except for one. And literally all they wanted you to do was write out the field names and group by all the field names, like written out, except for this one. But I thought that it was like too easy of a question. I was like, there must be something more to this. So I kept like probing them and asking them, okay, but do you want me to do this? Do you want me to do that? And I think that they got annoyed by that, and that's why they didn't. That's why they didn't give me an offer, to be honest. But if the question's easy, I think my takeaway is just take the win. Like you don't have to make it more complicated than it is if there's like some easy question when you're early in your career. And I'll end on this one. I'll end on this one where I was in a Zoom call recruiting for Bloomberg with like a group interview, which is a really interesting concept, also like interesting interview format to save money and time, I guess. And the interviewer starts calling for Sharafa. And I'm like, wow, I feel so bad for this person, Sharafa, because they're the first person who has to go. And it took me a minute to realize that Sharafa was me. And she was calling for me, but she was just reading and pronouncing my name really poorly. So, like, for people that have non-standard American names, I guess, this is a common experience that I think we can all relate to. But I think it's a reading issue at that point where, like, my name is spelled Shifra. If you speak and read English, you should know that it's not Sharafa. So that's still my position on that, is that, like, that's a reading skill issue. But
It's a skill issue.
it's a skill issue at that point. Yeah.
It you're funny. I think the sequel on the giant post-it note is my favorite one, where you then had to proceed to write out every column name on a
Yep.
giant post-it note. Like,
Yep.
just waste my time a little bit
Yep.
more, please.
And it was like it had 10 columns. It was like it was a wide table. And I was like, there's no point of this question unless
You're
there's
sitting
something
there.
else.
You're
Yeah,
sitting
like
there
there must be
watching me
another
write
layer to
things
this.
down for like 3 minutes at least, and you're just writing these column names on this post-it.
Totally. And I really wish I'd practiced like writing SQL on paper. I don't know if you had practiced that before FizzBuzz on paper, but I didn't really get that chance. And now I kind of understand why there are written comp sci exams at the college I went to. Because like you will run into this. This is a real thing that you unfortunately have to do.
I have yet to run into another written exam, probably also because the state of the world and everything being remote, and I don't even do my interviews in person anymore. So
Yeah.
that
It's
probably
true.
that helps or hurts. Wow, we've had a lot to say. You know, it's funny because when we started doing these podcasts too, we said, "Wow, like who wants to sit down and listen to an hour-long podcast?" And I think every podcast we've done has been almost an hour. So I see why podcasts take a long time because you have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, you have a lot to talk about, and you want to also strike a balance between like, I want to hit on the structure, I want to hit on the value, but I also want to have fun, and I want like my listeners to have fun listening. So you want to keep it kind of natural and flowing, and also let it go where it wants to go.
We try to pull it back in, but we let the sidebars happen too.
Yes, and I think a lot of times for me, like the sidebars are the best part, like the bits where they kind of break character. I'm like, oh yeah, now I see you. There you are, you know? Yeah. Yes, hashtag brain ram. Everyone use your brain ram.
Well, this has been it for the interview podcast. Next time we'll be back. It looks like with career growth. It looks like is the idea for the next one.
Yeah, career growth sounds like a lot of fun.
I hope my career continues to grow.
Yeah, we'll see how much it grows by next time.
Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.